Peace and love. My name is Darius Stanton, also known as Mr. Peace and Love. I'm your motivational speaker, the seed planter. I am the one who is going to help you grow in your life, your career, and your legacy by planting a seed in you that's going to grow and germinate and spread positive vibration and excellent information to all those you come in contact with. I want to start by thanking Dr. Madeline Ann Lewis for hosting the Show Up to Rise Up virtual conference with Dr. Madeline Ann Lewis. So let's get into it. Here's the question we're going to solve today. How do we lead the same way we've been leading for the last 50 to 100 years and expect to get different results? One thing you can rest assured of, anything that I share with you today, you can go find it, look it up, do the research. With a master's in human service administration from the Lincoln University, as a college professor at Anne Arundel Community College teaching sociology, as a recently appointed state economic development commissioner, appointed by the Speaker of the House, Adrian Jones, in the state of Maryland. You can rest assured the information that I share with you is going to be something you can go research. And as a matter of fact, I encourage you, get your pen, your paper, and write down some of these things that I'm going to share. So today's topic is retooling leadership. In 2024, how do we retool how we lead? How do we expect to get different results by leading the same way we've led for the last 50 years? It's impossible. So I want to tell you something that you can go study and research. It's called the Kerner Commission. The Kerner Commission did a study during the riots, and they wanted to find out why it took place, what could be done differently. And so they studied 5 factors in the African American community. Those 5 factors: education, health, finance, incarceration, and home ownership. It's a shame that we have to even include incarceration in the factors that we consider when you're talking about our community, but it's there. And one of the things that I want to point out to you, I mentioned those 5 areas: education, health, finance, incarceration, and home ownership. Out of the 5 that I just mentioned, which one have we improved in 50 years? Is it home ownership? Is it incarceration? Is it education? Finance? Well, let me tell you, it's education. But the only percentage is about 2% of an increase. Out of all the other factors, it's the only one with a bump. But what good is an education if you're still failing in home ownership? What good is an education if you're still failing in finances? What good is an education if you're still being incarcerated at very disproportionate and high levels? What good is an education if our health? Think about COVID. One of the things that was the biggest determining factor in the African American community that was dealt with or wasn't dealt with was the fact that most of the people who died of COVID in the African American community, they died based on pre-existing conditions. What are those pre-existing conditions? Heart disease, diabetes, cancer, obesity. 3 of the 4 are easily addressed through diet, exercise, right? And so think about it. If you increase your education, but your health is still poor, you're still not making the money that you need to make, you're still being incarcerated at those levels, then something's wrong with that education. And so what I want you to think about is, how do we retool education? Well, first and foremost, education starts at home. You cannot expect your children to do exceptionally well, to be scholars and super talented and reach the stars and the moon and beyond if you're waiting for school to educate your children. Whether you send them to private school, whether you send them to charter schools, Montessori, whatever it is, you need to be educating your children at home, your grandchildren at home. so that they go to school way ahead of the class, and their school is really reaffirming what you've already instilled and taught them. But now I want to talk about the principles of how we change those things, because in the 50 years that the Kerner Commission did this report, and they came back and looked at that data and found out that we've been on a decline, you got to ask yourself a question. What has happened in our leadership? We're in control in a large number of cities in America. We're in power as mayors, city councils, congressmen, senators, not as many senators, but in those other jurisdictions, the municipalities, we are in leadership. At the school board level, we're in leadership. So what is happening that we're not able to progress when we're in leadership? That means our leadership is not working. It's just that simple. The numbers speak for themselves. What I want to share with you is what we've developed as the principles of retooling leadership. Number one, asset-based and solution-oriented leaders. Asset-based. Assets meaning your strengths. Meaning we're focused on the positives. We're focused on what you have, not what you don't have. When people start a new job, they get on the new job, and first thing people say is, don't go talk to her because she's not good. Or don't go talk to him. He thinks he knows everything. They don't say, make sure you go see Miss Johnson, because Miss Johnson has all the keys and she's the nicest lady, and she'll make sure you got everything you need to get set up with. Oh, make sure you talk to Carl. Have lunch with him. Carl has a lot of institutional knowledge. He's great. I don't know if he'll have time to coach you, but he can definitely set you on the right path. We are so trained. If you look at our politics today, regardless of the party, if you look at what's going on around the world, in the Middle East, in the Congo, and you see that people are dying, children are being left abandoned without parents or murdered themselves, and the world is not stopping it in any of these places. We must retool how we lead. And we have to do that first and foremost by becoming asset-based leaders and not leading from a deficit. So in your staff meetings, stop starting off with the negatives. Start off with the top 5 or the hot topics, and make sure hot topics also include things that are good, not just the bad. Sure, you do need to put the bad news up front when you're leading and managing so you can get to it. But at the same time, you can also lead with the good news. These are the things the company's doing well. This is a staff who's really achieving. This is a person who was struggling, but now they're moving forward. Lead and focus with assets. When people are on the job and they're not doing well, they've got a skill and a talent. That's why you hired them. Find out what helps them be most successful, and then pair them up with somebody else to build where they're weak. Don't start looking for a way to fire them. You don't like them anymore. You don't have the time and the energy to put into the person that you hired. You spent all this money to train them, onboard them, bring them up to speed. And now you're going to cost yourself another $10,000 by repeating that process with another employee, when you could have just built on the strength and the assets of that person and partnered them with someone who has some of the skill sets at a higher level than they did, because they have talent and skill. It's why you hired them. Also, be solution oriented. Focus on the solutions. When your team brings you information, tell them, sure, bring me the challenge, but bring me the solution as well. Start to train folks on how to be solution oriented, and everybody in your team, your organization, your business, make sure that they're also, check this out, business case ready. Teach them how to do a business case. 1 page. If you reach out to us at www.dariusastanton.com, we'll provide you with one. It's a 1-page form. It's a business case. And what you're doing is you're teaching them about finance, what personnel and human resources are needed, how much time is going to be involved, what kind of investment is it going to take for the company. They may not have all the answers, but what it does is it makes them think about all the things that go into making a solid business decision. Not just at your leadership, not just your managers, but your frontline people. Your volunteers. Teach everyone that, your family, because now you're building people who are understanding business and how things work. So that's number 1, asset-based and solution-oriented. And make sure that you teach them business cases. Number 2, Lead with succession in mind. Do you know how many people, let me repeat that, lead with succession in mind. Do you know how many people want to stay as the head of the church for 50 years? The same church for 50 years. They want to be in the political seat for 20 years. As long as they can stay in the political seat, they want to hold on to it. They want to be the chair of the board for as long as they possibly can. We have to lead with succession in mind. You ever ask yourself the question, after all of that great leadership and power during the time that Dr. King was in place, what happened to the continuation of the civil rights movement? What happened to that leadership? Well, first and foremost, the leadership starts within. I remember being a little boy. My grandfather sang on a choir called the Men's Asbury United Methodist Church Choir, and they traveled all over the country. They went to Dr. King's church with Daddy King, and he actually came to Annapolis, Maryland, where I'm from, and spoke at our church. While during the time he was there, he also stayed at a local hotel. My grandfather took me with a few other men to speak and have some time with him. He put me up on his lap and he sat me right there. And he said, young man, I want you to be right here on my lap so you can hear all of this stuff that these good men are talking about. I was like 5 or 6 years old. The entire time, I don't remember how long it was, but he never let me move from off his lap. You see what he was doing? He brought me into it. He didn't say, go sit over there, play with this video game, use this phone while we talk. Of course, those things weren't available. He could have gave me some games, a crossword puzzle or something else. But no, he brought me right into the middle. Lead with succession in mind. Who's going to take a job? When I worked for Boys and Girls Clubs in Greater Washington, I was there almost 18 years. And in 18 years, I was promoted 6 different times. Because every time I got into a new role, I would tell my new team, listen, I've got 2 years before I'm going to be in another role. So you got 2 years to take my job. I'll prepare you. I'll get you ready. And when the time came for me to present to the board or the executive team or some other part of the organization, I would always either bring the people to present, or I would present their information and say, this came from Tim Phillips. This came from Monica Edwards. This came from Don Kerstetter. I would share the people's names because I want to promote. I'm already in the role. I don't need the credit. I'm getting the credit because I'm already in the position. Lead with succession in mind. Train people how to do what it is that you know how to do so you have a stronger organization. Number three, hold on tight. Put your ego in your back pocket. Put your ego in your back pocket. And lead with prayer, research, preparedness, which breeds confidence. You don't need a lot of ego when you got confidence because you did your homework. You did your research. You prayed about it. So you're being spiritually led. Put that ego in the back pocket. It will surface when it needs to, but it will be under control. Preparedness, research, and as I said, it all breeds confidence. In the 21st century, leaders have to be able to focus on the environment. You have to have a focus on the environment. Renewable energy, recycling, and that doesn't just mean energy sources and recycling, but it also means, what are you eating? We cannot continue to talk about, we care about people's health and we want them to do this during the health crisis, but we still feeding them pork, and we still have bacon at the prayer breakfast, and we still giving them soda at the children's event, and hot dogs and high fructose corn syrup, which causes the things that created sugar diabetes, cancer, and heart disease, coming straight from high fructose corn syrup. Do the research, look it up. So we can't keep talking about, we want to see these things happen in our community. We want to see our community healthy, but we're still feeding them these things that are killing us. It's talking out of two sides of your neck. So we must be able to lead with an environmental focus. You must understand the power of the sun and solar energy. We must understand that when children are waiting at bus stops, their carbon emissions, their chemicals that are coming out of those pipes, that those children are inhaling every day at the street level, every day while waiting on a bus, whether in the inner city, wherever they are, but they're waiting on those buses, and that they're taking that straight into their lungs. It's killing them. We must lead with the environment. People over profit. People over profit. Profit is very important. In order for us to be successful in business, we must make a profit. No argument. Whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit, they're both the businesses. But we must lead with people over profit. Because if you don't lead with people over profit, eventually, here's an example for you, Johnson & Johnson. Right now, they're no longer selling baby powder in the United States, only overseas, because they were charged with and being sued with having asbestos in their baby powder. Now, they've made millions of dollars, but now you've got all of these people who are coming forward and saying that they have been, their bodies have been altered, they've dealt with cancer and died. Can you imagine what it's like when somebody tells you you have cancer and you only have X amount of months to live? You got to take these treatments. Your whole life changes. Your whole family changes. The whole dynamic. Because how else do you expect for your children, your family, your community to be successful if you're preying on someone else to make a profit? Now, in America's capitalistic society, sure, the old dog have its day, dog eat dog. You know, you got to set people up in the office. You got to embarrass them at the staff meeting. You have to do all these conniving things to get ahead. You got to kiss tail. You got to, do things that you don't want to do. Laugh at jokes you think that aren't funny, that have no business being laughed at. You have to put people over profit. Because when you put people over profit and you invest in people and you contribute to their development and their growth, guess what you have? More intellectual capital. When you have more intellectual capital, you can do more. If you have a company that has 50 employees, 20 employees, 10 employees, and you take just one or two of them and you say, listen, I'm going to give you a few extra dollars to be a part of our research and development team, R&D. All big companies have research and development teams. So now they call them innovation teams, innovation labs. And what they're doing is they're creating these groups of people to work on new opportunities, new products, new ways to do business in the organization, ways to make money, improve profit, all those types of things. But picture this. If you had 10, 20, 100, or 500 employees, if you asked all of them to use their intellectual capital, now you're not just working with 5, 2, 5, 10, or 20. You're talking about 500 people using their brain power to build on the company's overall wealth and generation. And so now that intellectual capital is up here, not here. You know how many people say, well, I don't want to share it because they're going to blackball me if it doesn't work out. Or I'm not sharing my information with them because it doesn't matter. I don't own the company. Or you get when I get off at 5 o'clock, I'm off at 5 o'clock. I'm not sharing no other information with them. They don't think nothing of me and I don't like them no way. And I'm just here to get a paycheck. That's because you have not invested in your people. But when you invest in your people, they help you create greater profits. Their customer service is better because they care about their jobs. They're not playing on their phones or social media doing work as much because they care about the productivity. They understand the value of if the company does well, the company has more profit. The company's profit now can give me more benefits, raises, college pay, reimbursements, all kinds of things that you can have as benefits because the company is doing better, because they bought into the fact that you treat the company's greatest resource better. Put people over profit. And the last one, principle over politics. Principle over politics. Very simple. If you watch what's going on today in the world, whether it's locally, nationally or internationally, it is clear that people are putting politics over principle. And when you put politics over principle, whether it's formal politics with elected positions, or if it's politics in an office or a community, between organizations, if there's politics involved and you're not putting principle in front of it, then you're leading your community in a very dangerous place. And so I go back to our initial question. How can we lead and expect different results if we have the same leadership style that we've had for the last 50 years? Now, I didn't spend a lot of time talking about the poor leadership styles. And the reason why I didn't do that is because remember what I said, the number one principle in retooling leadership is asset-based communications, asset-based strength, focus on the assets. So that's what we did today. We focused on the assets. We focused on the strengths. And when we focus on the strengths and we put principle, integrity, ethics, principle over politics, then our children see that and they watch it. And here's what I want you to understand. When people come into, whether it's politics, leadership, informally or formally, on whatever level, they're watching what they do. They're watching what the people in those roles do. And right now, what people are doing is they're taking pictures and being on social media. They're showing up at events. They're being seen with who's seen as important people. But the question is, what are they producing? What are the results? Sure, they got a great promotional marketing campaign, but how many children have they graduated from their school? How many children have come out of their program and gone on to get scholarships to college? How many people have they promoted within the organization? How many people who came to your program now run their own business? Look for the results because they're watching you. I watched all of my grandfather taught me this as a very young child. He said, listen, when people talk to you, just like I'm talking to you right now, he said, take what you can use and what you can't, leave it there, but always listen. So if you listen and you watch, because that's what I did. I watched, I had a vice president of operations. He was, he didn't really treat people well because I think he was a bit insecure. So he always would say stuff like, oh, you're looking good today. I seen that suit on the wall at the post office. Who says that? That's the way you greet somebody in the morning, talking about somebody being in a lineup or some mugshot. But that's because he was insecure, right? So but what I did get from him was he got to work at 5 o'clock every morning. And at 5 o'clock to 9 o'clock, he took care of all of the business he needed to deal with. So when the staff came in, we had over 21 Boys and Girls Clubs, over close to 300 staff. When he came into that space, what he realized at 9 o'clock, he had time to work on all those other things because he had dealt with all the other stuff. So he could deal with the fires, the emergencies, whatever was coming up, he could be there for his staff, but he got there at 5 o'clock. I learned that from him. So when I became vice president of operations with the largest organization, Boys and Girls Club affiliate in America, when Boys and Girls Club of Greater Washington, then I was able to replicate those good behaviors. So I want you to understand how important it is to make sure that you lead with principle over politics. So I'm going to run them by you one more time just so you have them fresh in your mind. Number one, asset-based and solution-oriented. Number two, lead with succession in mind. Number three, put your ego in your back pocket and lead with prayer, research, preparedness, which breeds confidence. Number four, the 21st century leaders have a focus on the environment. Food, energy, natural resources must be a part of your platform. Number five, put people over profit. And last but not least, principle over politics. My name is Darius A. Stanton. You can reach us at dariusastanton.com. I want to again thank you, Dr. Madeline and Lewis, for hosting the Show Up to Rise Up Virtual Summit with Dr. Madeline and Lewis. Peace and love. And remember, retool how you lead. Thank you.